Today's mission is talking about Code Geass without mentioning any current event. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is the show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week I'll be talking about Code Geass Lelouch of the Revolution Season 1. Before I start, some disclaimers, spoiler alert. I'll be talking about everything that happens in the first season, including the ending, because the ending I think it's important to mention. I'll get there when we get there, but either way. Also, I'll be only talking about the first season. Next week, next episode, I will be talking about the second season. And later on, I may talk about the OVAs, specifically Akito the Exiled. I will do this specifically because outside from the first two seasons and Akito specifically, from everything that I have researched basically says that everything outside of the first two seasons, and specifically those OVAs, are basically parallel universes where the story kind of changes a bit. And for all that matters, I would prefer to keep it only on canon, and also because these animes are like 25 episodes a season, so it's quite hard to actually cover everything in the production schedule I have right now. So either way, just a heads up, this is about the first season, and next episode, second season. Also, already talking about the fact for the first season, for those who watched it and those who want to watch it, the first season ends in a cliffhanger for the second one, so it is inconclusive at best, and for that reason it may come out as it may be too much of a descriptive review rather than a conclusive, because the second season is integral to the whole story. Not only that, but the fact that this anime is really hard to cover considering every single nuance that actually is present in the story, also because of the theming and the things that they actually show. Just to get a glimpse of it, I started the second season, and let's just say they treat the Geneva Convention more as a checklist, and I will leave it at that for now. So, those are the disclaimers. Spoiler alert again, if you want to watch it, watch it. It's a really, really old anime, I think. I don't know whichever streaming service has it, because depending on the region you are in, these things kind of change, but easy to say this is one of the most iconic animes overall, if you're talking about the mid-2000s, and for that reason, I really wanted to watch it. I never actually watched it till today, and so it is really an experience. So before I even start with the review and stuff, let's get to the stats. So, Code Geass Lelouch of the Revolution is originally an anime done by the studio Sunrise, so the same guys who did Gundam. It is kind of backup, action, adventure, kind of political drama and stuff, so it gets a whole lot of themes around it. It ran originally from October 2006 to July 2007, with 25 episodes, and then the second season from April 2008 to September 2008. I know for a fact that given the cliffhanger in season 1, I would be pretty pissed if I was there at the time. From then on, we have all the OVAs and the movies, and then the retellings of the story, let's say the parallel universes or something like that. And some things I need to take care before, so this was done by Sunrise, but the character designs were done by Clamp. Clamp, for those who don't know, I think I mentioned them sometimes here in the podcast before, but they are an all-female manga circle that is active since the 80s. I think that they had more members back in the 80s, and now they are only 4 if I'm not mistaken. They are mostly known for XX-holic. That is superstition kind of, I would say a Shintoist kind of drama, romance, slice of life. It's really weird. And also showbiz. that those are really old in and of themselves. Showbiz is from 2002 and XXholic is from 2003, so it is really old, but then again, they are active since the 80s, so the whole thing is really, they have been around. That's the thing. And the whole thing is really funny when you actually watch it, because they have such a specific and really, I mean, I have read XXholic for a long last time and watched the anime, and it has become kind of endearing the way that they do their characters, and so the designs really feels nostalgic, let's say. It is really something that goes directly to my heart. The designs, the ideas, the whole thing about how expressive the everything is, and the characters look, and is really nice. With that said, let's get to the story. Quick side note that all the openings are really good for the first season. I have not watched the second season as of yet, but first season really nice. So let's get to it. So the story, it's really convoluted, so let me get just hanging there, okay? So the story is about our main guy, Lelouch, or Lelouch, I think it's the name they actually pronounce in the English dub. I will choose to say Lelouch because it's the way they say it in Japanese, and also because it's the one that I am, let's say, used to. So Lelouch is a student on the Ashford Britannian School. So just to give the context, so Lelouch is Britannian, not British, Britannian, because in this version of history, the world is basically divided in, let's say, 3 big states. So there's the Empire of Britannia, that is, if I'm not mistaken, specifically England and the United States and Canada. Then there's the Chinese Federation, and from what I can understand, the rest of the world, basically. So the EU is another area, and then we have other countries there, but the important bit is that Britannia is basically the US and England, and they have invaded Japan in 2007 with their overwhelming force. They have basically taken over the country, and Lelouch is, as we would find out later, part of the Britannian royal family, though he is kind of really far away from the main branch. So he's basically the son of, I would say, a concubine, but it's not a concubine, it's kind of the mistress of the emperor, and so on and so forth. So he has a whole lot of other half-brothers, half-sisters that are vying for the throne, and then he has a whole lot of traumas relating to the fact that he's on a branch family, and as we would find out later, and due to this fact, his younger sister is, how do I say that without actually triggering anyone nowadays? I don't actually know. So he has a little sister that is blind and needs to use a wheelchair due to her not being able to walk, and this is all due to basically due to trauma, they say, because at some point in their infancy they basically watched as their state was attacked by terrorists, and they killed their mother, and Nanani, the sister, is impaired due to that since she was really young. So with that, Lelouch has developed this hatred towards not only his father, it's mainly his father, but also the whole Britannian Empire, because he knows for a fact that someone inside of the royal family did the attack, and so he has basically festered this idea of revenge for 10 years, and now in 2017 he is a normal student until one day when he gets involved with a terrorist attack, and basically the terrorists steal something that at the beginning looked like a gas bomb that was secretly developed by the government, but then he finds out that it's not actually a gas bomb, it is actually a girl being carried out to another place undetermined. And in a twist of fate, while almost being rounded up by Britannian soldiers and finding out that one of his childhood friends, Kosako Kururugi, that he also becomes important later, has become basically, so again, Lelouch is Britannian, so he has no problem living in Japan that's dominated by Britannia. But then his childhood friend Kusaku, he is actually Japanese, and then there's this whole stigma that the anime shows a lot of, that the Japanese are oppressed by the Britannians, even though not everyone is actually an oppressor and so on and so forth. But more likely than not, you see Japanese being beaten by Britannians and so on and so forth. The whole kind of discrimination thing. And the thing is, Kusaku, in the 10 years that it's been since the original invasion, he has become an honorary Britannian, and has basically entered the army to raise up the ranks and get to his own living and stuff. And he's also discriminated inside of the army. So he, by being an honorary Britannian and not actually a pureblood, he is also discriminated. And the whole thing kind of goes from there. And obviously that the first few soldiers that they find are fully on corrupt and abusive. So they will kill anyone that they want just because. And in the last minute, the girl, after being shot and basically she heals, it's really something weird that later on gets explained. She has an internal monologue with Lelouch inside of his mind, basically, and gives him powers. Those powers are what we call Geass. Those who play D&D will know what Geass is, but then again. And from then on, there's the first big scene of the whole anime where he orders a whole troop to end themselves, and they basically are forced to do it, fully complying to the order, and we go on from there. And that's the basic, very glossed over setting. Later on, we find out that Lelouch is part of the student council inside of the Ashford Academy. We find out that he's the vice president. The president is the granddaughter of the director. She is like disgraced nobility. I think that's the correct term. And there's a whole lot of little things that happen that are presented, like Lelouch having one girl, Shiri, that is head over heels for him, and then eventually this all comes down. The important bit about the first episode is that Lelouch has this whole... He gains powers, and then he helps the terrorists that are attacking the government to actually win one fight. And the whole thing kind of works that way, because he wins the fight, and everything from the rest, all the supporting characters kind of start to move from there. So we have people in the media that eventually will join him, that come forward as they hear about it. We then have the then governor of Japan, Clovis, the third prince, I think. And then we have a whole lot of other stuff. We get to meet the terrorists. It's really hard to actually repeat this a lot. So just to get a bit forward, when Lelouch has this whole complex that he wants revenge. So he has been festering this revenge plot for 10 years, and so now that he has this special supernatural power that actually renders anyone that sees it obeying his orders, he has his Joker arc for like 2 minutes, and then just says, yeah, I will build an army and take over the world and avenge my mother and this is one bit that is actually important. Create a world where his sister, Nanali, can live happily. And this comes back to bite him again. So there's that. The thing that is really interesting about Lelouch, at the very least in the first half of the anime, is that he is an actual psychopath. So he doesn't really care about other people's lives, be it his allies or his enemies, and he is an actual asshole whenever it comes to it, at the very least for the first 12 episodes. Then we get to meet the other supporting characters. We get to meet everybody in the academy. We get to meet everybody in the what will become the Black Knights. And so the one person that is important in the Black Knights outside of Lelouch is Kalin. Kalin is another student in the same Ashford Academy that is the pilot of one of the mechas they use. They call Nightmares, so it's Nightmare like the K in the front, so it's a knight and then mare. She's really... I mean, if you look up Code Geass, you will either find her image, that's the girl with the red hair and the red mecha, and or C2, or I think CC in the English dub, I think. That is the green-haired girl, that one that actually gives Lelouch his powers. And the whole thing, and this is the part where I've talked most of the stories, so I can actually get going. So I think it lasts for like 6 episodes, the first kind of scramble, so Lelouch creates this alter ego to actually interact with the outside world while being the mastermind behind trying to create a resistance against the Britannians, and he calls himself Zero. He is then the main strategist and the main guy of the whole, let's say, rebellion. He joins up with a resistance group in the Tokyo settlement. It's really... I will talk about world building a bit later, but easy to say they do a really good job. That being said, so he orchestrates all their operations from then on, and until the 6th episode is basically a back and forth between him being a resistance member and his schoolwork and stuff, and his fight with the Viceroy of Japan, or Area 11 that they call it, Clovis, his half brother. And then when he actually confronts Clovis face to face and stuff, he asks whoever killed their mother, and the whole thing kind of goes from there. This is the first, let's say, introduction arc where everything's kind of starting. Then from then on, we have the introduction of the new Viceroy as Clovis dies and stuff, and a whole lot of people get demoted, a whole lot of things happen in the sidelines that will eventually come back to bite them. We have the introduction then of the new Viceroy after Clovis, Cornelia, and the sub-Viceroy, Euphemia, and oh my god, what they did to Euphemia. And they will stick around till, I think, 4 episodes till the end of the season. Specifically, Euphemia, because I think, yeah, Cornelia lasts until the last episode, so it doesn't really matter, but Euphemia, easy to say, she... Oh my god. Well, the thing is, then from then on we get to see everything that happens, and then the first season is basically after Clovis dies. It's what I would call the rise of the Black Knights. So it is both Lelouch and, in that case, Kalen from the school working together to build up the Black Knights as an actual resistance group with popular support and stuff. And then they actually, and the thing about watching this is that Lelouch he has really thought everything through, and for the most part, whenever he does something, it is for the media and for the symbology of everything to actually either gather support or destabilize the image of the empire in Japan specifically. And the whole thing kind of works out that way for the first season. Then we have also the introduction again of Suzaku as a special nightmare pilot for the Imperium. So for the Empire. Sorry, I have been watching too much content about 40k. Anyways, so Suzaku is basically on the other side of the fight, and for the most part he has a really different approach to stuff from Lelouch. The thing about this all is that Lelouch has created this alter ego, and nobody, even his allies inside of the Black Knights, know of his identity, so nobody actually knows about it until we get to, I think, the half of this, not really the half, the end of the first season. And then from there, the second season is basically what I would call the fall. So if the first season basically was the building and stuff, the second is basically a consolidation of everything that Lelouch wanted. So all the resistance groups eventually fall, and then he basically picks up the pieces to add to this new cell that he's creating, and the whole thing kind of works in a way that he's getting stronger, but at the same time it is kind of not, because Clovis at the start is really lax about the whole thing. He really subestimates everyone, and when Cornelia comes into the picture, she's really no holds barred. She really throws everything in the kitchen sink at the problem and really destroys everyone on her wake. So it becomes this kind of thing where Cornelia is really tougher than Clovis was, and for that reason, they lose a whole lot of stuff in the process, but they also gain a lot of stuff. And now I need to start talking about the specifics. So, first things first. So, I will talk first about Lelouch versus Suzaku, because it is the main kind of conflict that we have. So, at the start, Lelouch has this whole grandiose revolution plan, and he doesn't really care about dirtying his hands, so he kills a lot of people and he knows it. That being said, they eventually, him as Zero interacts with Suzaku in saving him, because Suzaku is then blamed by Clovis' death and so on and so forth, but eventually they find a way to free him, even though the whole thing's kind of fucked. And the question that comes up, and it is the main question of the whole, I think the whole first part of the season, the whole thing comes down to the age-old question of the ends justify the means. And for the most part, at the release in the first season, you could say yes, because for all that's worth it, Lelouch has a whole lot of successes to his name. So whereas Lelouch thinks of the revolution as the way that he will change the world and destroy the way that things are and stop this discrimination and save everybody, the way that he thinks about it is that he needs power, he needs force to do it, and so he's engaged in terrorism and stuff. And in the other side of the coin, we have Suzaku, who is, at the end of the day, a Japanese that surrendered his, let's say, citizenship, nationalism, let's say, in order to adhere to the system and try to grow inside of the system, which in a way is not wrong, but I do see the arguments that the anime is veered towards you liking Lelouch's way more, and that's the thing. I think this anime is really engaging in that whole sphere, because I think you either watch this liking Lelouch or liking Suzaku. And there may be a middle there, but at the same time, it is really hard to argue that the anime doesn't favor Lelouch in some ways. For what's worth, in my opinion, at the release, I prefer Lelouch's method. I think that, while not fully justified, I think that it is, for all that the anime shows us, the realistic, effective way of doing stuff. And with that, then, we have this whole... and the most... let's say, most of the conflict between the two of them, Lelouch and Suzaku, is a matter of following the rules, basically doing a change inside the system or outside of the system, and so the whole thing goes from there. It adds up to the conflict that Suzaku, at a very early stage, he gets an experimental nightmare that is way better than anything that the rest of the Empire has, and basically is the turn on the side for Lelouch for a whole ass time until the end of the season. So it comes out as well, also because they don't actually know it. Suzaku obviously doesn't know at the first season that Lelouch is Zero, and on the contrary, Lelouch doesn't know that what they call the White Helmet nightmare is controlled by Suzaku, and so the whole thing kind of goes from there. Then we have the whole thing behind of the backstory of Lelouch and Nunnally. So the whole thing is kind of not really that well explained. It's a whole mystery that moves the season forward, really. That basically Nunnally and Lelouch are assumed dead after the attack on their state so many years back, and the whole thing is that they are being kind of taken care of by the Ashford family that's disgraced nobility, but they are still good friends and so on and so forth. The only two that remain from the family is Lelouch and Nunnally, and they live inside of the academy with their maid Sayoko, who is basically Nunnally's AD for the most part. That being said, it never really comes up on how everything really went down. They don't actually enter in many details, though they have a few flashbacks that give context of why Lelouch hates his father so much, and also the whole scene of the attack and their mother dying and stuff. And I would just say that, man, the face of Nunnally on that scene, it's really heavy. It's really heavy. And this is a thing... tangent right here. So this is a thing that I need to actually touch on, because it's something that I feel like some people would want to hear, but this anime is actually pretty heavy on a lot of stuff. So as I said of the introduction, the Geneva Convention is a checklist for them at the release, and killing civilians is, I think, the very start. I don't know how things work out, really. I never actually read the Geneva Convention itself, but easy to say that the whole thing is kind of really fucked up in a way. So from the very beginning, the Britannians for the most part don't actually care about anything, and so you see a whole lot of people being slaughtered by armed soldiers for the longest time in this anime. And the whole thing kind of goes from there. Not only that, but the way that everyone is... Let's say the soldiers are really, really soldiers. They really just follow orders. And in that way, if someone says kill all the civilians, they will do. And this happens at the beginning of the series. This happens in the middle of the series. And this does happen at the end too. So it's a lot of civilian killing. Not only that, but they abuse power left and right. And the whole thing kind of goes from there, right? Then, oh my god. From then on, we get every kind of fuckery stuff. So... from talking about the backstory of Lelouch and talking about Suzaku, I need to talk a bit about Kalin. Kalin is half Britannic, so she has this whole arc about not belonging and seeing herself as a Japanese more than a Britannian, because her mother is the maid of the home and her father is the Britannian, and so on and so forth. And basically she has problems at home, basically, with her stepmother and stuff, so there's that. Another point is that her brother was the original leader of the resistance, though it's a plot point that they throw around like twice and just leave it at that. Then there is the point of Shiri, and boy, how... Oh, that was emotionally charged, really. I have to give kudos to the writing team. That one actually got me really hard. The way that they handle it. So Shiri, she likes Lelouch, but at the start she doesn't want to admit it, and then it becomes kind of that fangirl kind of stuff. It reminds me a lot of shoujo works from the early 2000s too, but then at one point when Lelouch is already set up and they are already working as a full-on resistance and they have armaments and so on and so forth, one of the battles that Lelouch has against Cornelia is near Narita, and basically unbeknownst to him, Shiri's dad is a soldier under Cornelia, and due to the way that the battle goes, he uses I don't know how you would say that, is a seismic charge, something like that. He basically causes a big ass landslide, and in that he suffocates a lot of people. One of those being Shiri's dad. And the way that they introduced the fact that happened, and then actually trying to confront Lelouch with that and actually getting him to a kind of, let's say, the way that the anime presents the fact that he has now to live with the fact that he is affecting someone close to him, because back then he had some kind of distance, let's say, so he didn't see the people that he was killing as people. But now that he has an actual aftermath of something that he did, he then starts to question himself whether or not he's right on doing the way that he's doing. And also the whole thing kind of works out in a way that Shiri becomes way more attached to him, so eventually they try to start something, more or less. Lelouch obviously is not really on it, but Shiri surely is. And at some point, she's so curious about him, so trying to understand him, that she involves herself near one of their later operations, and due to the fact that how things goes, she eventually finds out who Zero is, and in that she finds that out, the whole thing kind of goes on a way that she doesn't actually tell him, but she kind of does, and the whole thing kind of goes from there. And then after some time, we get to see another Geass user that C2 had a previous contract with appear, try to get C2 for himself and kill Lelouch. And he did that, basically manipulating Shiri, and the whole thing kind of goes from there. The guy eventually gets killed off, but that's that. The thing is, right, so the way that they end this whole mini arc about Lelouch and Shiri is, and I will not, like, it's not the same thing of me, like, saying this and watching it, but the way that they did it is so well done in a way, because I think there's a whole lot of emotional energy that comes out from those scenes. And the whole thing kind of works well with the fact that even though Lelouch is totally a psychopath for doing what he's doing, he still gets reminded that he's a person, and he reacts to things like a person, and the whole thing kind of works out that way, that even though he does a lot of bad stuff, like easily and not batting an eye, eventually those things that he does come back to bite him, and in that way he reacts as a normal person. He ends up using his Geass to make Shiri basically forget him, and the whole thing kind of, oh my god, it's really hard to actually watch it. And then from that case, I need to talk about C2. So C2 is really mysterious. At the release in the first season, it doesn't actually get explained whatsoever. We are led to believe that she has actually, the whole thing about she giving powers and stuff to people is due to a kind of disease or something like that, though. And then she also makes contracts whenever she bestows Geass upon someone. No Geass work against her, but this comes up again and again, and we never actually know what contract she does with the Geass user, though. The one thing that I really like the way that she does it is that she's really direct and not really nice for the most of the first season. I think in the last few episodes of the first season, she actually starts to become somewhat of an ally actually for Lelouch. She actually kind of concedes the fact that she needs his help too, and in that fact, she, for the most part in the first season, she's not the voice of reason, but the voice of his ambition, because as soon as a lot of things starts happening that he needs to deal with his Sims and what he does and the consequences of the people that he affects indirectly. So for instance, the Shiri thing and some stuff with Suzaku and other people from the school specifically, he starts questioning himself, even to the point that we audience think that he will like give up and stuff. But then she comes and says, oh, now you're going to give up. Now you're a hypocrite. You're already this deep and now you're thinking about stopping, and so on and so forth. And in that sense, she really puts him back in the track, and in a really nice way as well. So it is really interesting the way that they wrote her. And now to talk about the one case that actually, let's say, broke me watching this season. Oh my god. So we have Euphemia. Euphemia is the fourth princess of the Empire, maybe, I think. And as well as Clovis, as well as Cornelia, they all know Lelouch and so on and so forth and stuff. Though she's really, really innocent, she's really, really gullible, and she's really, really naive, really young, inexperienced in that way. And she has all these ideas. She's really... she doesn't actually play the political game and stuff, and for the most part she's basically thrown around just as a symbol for most part and stuff. What really makes Elfie work as a character is that she's really honest on everything, and she does the stuff and stuff. Though it's clear for the audience that she's getting the way, she still does stuff, and it's really, really cute, really, really endearing that way. She's the kind-hearted princess and so on and so forth. Really juxtaposition to Cornelia that is really harsh, strict, and no holds barred. Euphemia, as I think it's represented in her name, she's really soft, really kind, really easygoing, on a lack of a better word, but the whole thing kind of works that way. And her whole arc, I would say her whole arc begins and ends really quickly, because until a certain point of the story, she doesn't actually have any development whatsoever. But at one point, she starts to develop feelings for Suzaku, and ends up that she basically has one of the weirdest confessions in anime, in my opinion, at the release, because she demands that he loves her, and vice versa. So she demands his love, and the whole thing kind of works out that way. And in the next episode, basically, having done that, they come up with a really weird idea. I think it's the next episode. I may be wrong, but it really comes out, and this is a point, right? So at the moment that Euphemia gets her arc going, a new prince has appeared. I think it's Shinaizo, his name, probably. It's an older prince than Cornelia, not to be the viceroy for Japan, but as military support sent by the homeland, because at this point Black Knights are gaining territory, and there are also other forces at play trying to get on the winning side, let's say. And the whole thing kind of works out that way, that he appears, and it becomes somewhat clear from the get-go that he, even though he looks kind and caring and so on and so forth, he actively uses his own family to political gain or to mainly operations. So, for instance, this idea that Euphemia has, and eventually he approves of, is to create a special zone meant for Japanese people to live like normal people outside of the discrimination of Britannia inside of Japan. So it's an area near Mount Fuji that is meant for mainly Japanese people. And then they create this operation, they build kind of a zone and so on and so forth. But then Euphemia herself calls out to Zero because she wants to make amends by doing this. And it is out of the pure heart, like it's really out of kindness that she does it. She really has the best intentions, and it becomes really clear from the get-go that she does not hold ulterior motives whatsoever for anything. But then, and this is one of the parts of the writing that I do not agree with, out of nowhere, Lelouch basically loses control of his Geass, and for that moment, talking to Elfie, and at this point he's unmasked, she already knows that Zero is Lelouch and so on and so forth. They are talking normally and stuff, and Lelouch admits defeat for Elfie. The first case of him admitting defeat to anyone in the whole anime, and he basically is like giving examples of stuff that he would order people to do with his Geass and so on and so forth. And one of the examples that he throws around is kill all the Japanese people. Lo and behold, the one like microsecond where his Geass comes back to him is him looking directly at her, telling her this order, and not meaning to actually activate the Geass at that point. He accidentally does, and so she proceeds to do it for the next, I would say, 45 minutes, something like that. And oh my god, man, that whole thing is so fucked up. It's so fucked up. It's really hard for me to describe it here, but it really deconstructs the whole idea of Elfie, because Elfie, till that point, she was the most centric figure in the whole anime. She was conceding on some things, demanding on others. She didn't think that discrimination was right. She was basically on board with giving back Japan. She wasn't really a proponent of the expansionist things that Britain was doing, and for the most part, she was one of the good guys. Truly, she, out of her own kindness, she was, without any ulterior motive, looking out for the better of everyone. And in that moment that they write Lelouch unwillingly giving the worst possible order, because at this point when this whole thing happens is the inauguration of the special zone. They are on a stadium full to the brim with Japanese people. And as I said at the beginning, the soldiers in here, they are really soldiers. They just follow orders. And so when she comes out and says, everybody kill every one of the Japanese, they actually do it. And it is really fucked up that way. It's really fucked up. And at that moment, everything just goes to hell. Like, order everybody to attack, and basically the revolution actually starts. And it becomes kind of like the purge, and the whole thing kind of really becomes fucked up. It ends up that Euphemia eventually gets shot, and in that way she ends up dying, and the whole thing kind of, oh my god, that scene is so strong. I cannot make justice for how strong that whole sequence is, how that episode just screwed me over, man. That was really, I would say, thrilling, really, because oh my god, man, what the fuck was that? Like, here's the thing, right? So for the longest time in this anime, after they are introduced and stuff, for the past like 3-4 episodes maybe, Elfie has been giving a whole lot of red flags about her possibly dying. I think that at that point a lot of people were giving red flags about dying, but Elfie especially was someone that was giving special red flags, because the special zone, man, that the whole thing was outright like, yeah, she's going to die. She's probably going to die. And she gave out so many red flags, and they took so long to actually do it. I was actually impressed, because after the red flag, I didn't actually think that they would like develop her so much more to the point that I would really care, because the red flag was so obvious. But at the same time, they did it in a way that really got not caught out of guard, but, and again, I think the writing is dubious at best in that situation, because the way that he talks in that conversation, that exchange, is really not normal. Like, I think Lelouch, for all that he's worth, and here's the thing, for all that he is someone that plans things out and stuff, even when he loses, he shouldn't like let his guard down. And explaining to Elfie the way that his powers worked, even though he knew that she wouldn't tell anyone, he shouldn't do it, right? And the whole thing kind of is the fault of that whole thing is the oh my god, man. And then it leads to one of the worst parts of the anime, I think, because after that, then Suzaku becomes infuriated because he was in love with Elfie. He, for some reason, no explanation whatsoever, a new kid appears that basically gives gears to people, apparently, spoils him on everything that is been happening, explains to him why Lelouch has his powers, and the whole thing kind of goes from there to worse. Then now Suzaku basically turns out like he goes back on his word to be like in the system to do the right thing, and actually goes out just to kill Zero, or Lelouch in that matter. And he ends up finding out that actually Lelouch is Zero after a confrontation, and then after a whole lot of battle and stuff, and Lelouch fucking up everyone over, Cornelia is killed, and the anime ends on a cliffhanger for the second season. And that's the whole story of the first season. So whole story, more or less. But anyways, talking a bit about So just to talk about some more broad stuff, I really like I would say the animation is pretty good in this anime. It's not that wow, so well done and stuff. It's the competent, pretty, I would not say utilitarian for that reason, that it is not like just enough. It is a bit above. In some instances, it's really great, and I would say that for that reason, I think it's an anime well done in terms of animation. I would say that the writing really, for me at the very least, personally, is really flawed in some instances, but I forgive it due to the way that things were written back in 2006, and also because I think that at the end of the day, the idea of the show is showing that even though someone can be so much of a psychopath to actually do a revolution, they are still people, and so they struggle living with the consequences of their actions, which is basically the main arc for Lelouch since Shiri and stuff, and everyone else too, because as Karen, for example, is also part of the Black Knights. When she finds out that they are attacking the school, she has to concede her normal life in order to basically come back to not to it, but she has to concede her normal life to protect her friends. And conversely, right, I think C2 is really important in the way that the anime is made, because Lelouch is still a person. And so what I think that they do a lot is that they shift the blame to the fact that Lelouch is not really the one fully at fault, and C2 is part of the blame, because she is the one that puts him back in the track whenever he thinks about giving up. And in that way, it's really like interesting, the dynamic there. Another thing they want to do, or better to say, is that I think some specific episodes are really just outright bad, that I don't think that they needed to be there. They're really just filler. Even though they have like a minor significance at the end, I don't think that they necessarily were needed. And in that matter, I think that the writing, again, talking about the writing specifically, it's not really the first time that I mention it, but for those who are listening to me for the first time, I really like the revenge plot kind of manga and anime that have been coming out for the last few years. I think late 2010s, early 2020s, they have like ramped it a bit up, and I really like those because I don't know why I like it. I know that I like it because it feels like freedom. The character being kind of an asshole, I think it's entertaining. And in that being an asshole bait, the one thing that I hate whenever I see it in one of those revenge kind of stuff is whenever there's hesitation by the main character, because the main character, the whole idea is the revenge. If the main character begins to hesitate, I think that there's a lost point there. Like, if you're going to stop your revenge, the whole story is pointless, right? And in that matter, I would say that Code Geass falls into the same camp. So Code Geass is necessarily a revenge story, and for that reason I like Lelouch when he's been an asshole, because he's an asshole. But whenever he begins to like doubt himself because of something that he did and very much should be aware of, it kind of breaks the suspension of disbelief, and I just come back like, yeah, you're an asshole, what's new? And then he's there crying, and I was like, man, you made this, like, what the fuck, are you actually guilty about it? Like, after killing so many people? And in that way, I really lean towards C2 in that way, because she's the voice of the revolution, that sense, and in a weird way, I really like her. Another thing that I want to mention, and I don't have a tangible example here, but especially I really like the female characters, all of them in this anime. They are really well presented, really strong, really, and this is not like a bit of like inclusion stuff. It's something that I notice, okay, because they are not really there just to be a harem for for Lelouch or just to be a token, but they actually do stuff. Kalin specifically, she is really, really strong as a character. Her motivations, her desires, the way that she does stuff, the way that she's written, flawed as a human too, and the whole thing, it feels really nice to actually watch them. She really, I don't think that what they did to Shuri was right, but that's besides the point. And I think in a way, again, talking about Elfie, oh boy, what they did to Elfie was so dirty. She was such a good character, but oh my god, what they did to her was so dirty. Anyways, it's a bit trauma. The sight of Elfie, of all people, grabbing a machine gun and actually shooting at civilians, that breaks a man, bro. That's really fucked up. Now, just to finish up before I start rambling more, one thing that I wanted to mention, and here is something that is really out of nowhere, really. I remember when I first started, way back when, like 2016, I think, when I returned to actually watching anime and stuff, when I was just finishing, or just had finished Guilty Crown for the first time, I was like, holy shit, man, this is the best action anime I've ever watched. The music, the stuff, it's awesome. And then someone said, oh, you like Guilty Crown, you might like Code Geass, because it's basically the same thing. And I was like, holy shit, how can this be the same thing? Oh, it's the same thing. I actually tried watching Code Geass for the first time some years back, but I watched like the first episode and was like, holy shit, this seems bad. I see now why the comparisons made, and I have to say that thematically is not really the same, because whereas Guilty Crown was someone getting roped into a revolution, Code Geass, I would say, is someone starting a revolution in that sense. But in many ways, there are so many parallels that I could see in Guilty Crown that came from Code Geass, and given that Guilty Crown was from 2011, you can already see where I'm going. So the thing is, right, so it starts the same. So a random high school student finds a girl, for some reason gets powers from the girl, or less, and ends up wiping a certain number of military personnel. They get involved with a resistance cell. They eventually rise up to be the leader. Both Shu and Lelouch, I'm talking about here, so you can already see the way. Both of them have a power that is really exclusive, so like just a few people have. The power is mostly dependent on people, other people. They don't actually have power themselves, and this whole thing kind of goes from there. And the one thing that really grabs me, but it is different, but really grabs me, is that eventually they betray their initial love interest and all other possible love interests that they have for the girl that originally gave them the power. And in that way, that's the most like, oh my god, this is actually Guilty Crown all over again, because oh man. And right, the Guilty Crown works in a whole different way to Code Geass, but that then is the fact that the dynamic between the characters is different, because Inori, for the most part, in Guilty Crown, she's really, I would say, passive in the way that she doesn't actually start anything. I think the only part that she actually acts on her own will, that's actually like not following orders or not really like doing something on the fly, is when she ditches Shu at the end of the school arc for the resistance. Outside of that, she never actually does anything to go against Shu or stuff, and she never gives lip. She's really more supportive of Shu than C2 is for Lelouch, and for the most part she doesn't talk a lot. And while C2 is really outspoken, she uses so much sarcasm. It's really hard to actually follow all the jokes that she throws at him. And in that way, they all fall in the same like category, and the end result is kind of the same. And this is really weird and at the same time really interesting to see, but it's something that I wanted to point out, that Guilty Crown and Code Geass kind of similar. Now, I already talked about animation, I already talked about songs especially. I will not really mention too much. The first opening is okay, the second opening is okay, the third opening is whatever. I I didn't actually listen to any of the endings. Animations, already said, is pretty great. The character designs, as I already said, I really like them, really gets to me. And really talking about the whole anime, I will have to wait till next episode so I can have the full vision of what the hell is going to happen in season 2. I really like that this, at the very least, is a 5th episode anime, because the first season doesn't actually close on anything. But then again, it was other times. 2006 was a really long time ago, and now I have to feel again the fact that I'm getting old. So yeah, that's about it. So thank you guys for listening, thank you guys for watching. Please like, please share, please follow, depending on the platform you're in, and I hope to stick around for next time. Bye.